6:30 and a quorum is present. So I will call this meeting of the Madison Plan Commission of May 22nd to order. First is communications, disclosures, and recusals. Members of the body should make any required disclosures or recusals under the city's ethics code. Are there any disclosures or recusals? Seeing no raised hands, the next item is public comment. And we do have one public comment. Patrick Heck, neither supporting nor opposing and wishing to speak. Patrick, you have 3 minutes.
Mute. Okay, I'm assuming you can hear me now. I'm not.
Yes, we can. We can.
I'm not accustomed to this format. So as a Plan Commission colleague of Brad Cantrell's for 4 years, beginning in 2019, when I was first elected as District 2 Alder, I wanted to publicly thank Brad for his exemplary service to the city and the people of Madison, since apparently this is Brad's last meeting. As a new commissioner in 2019, it was incredibly helpful to have Brad on board because of his broad range of knowledge about all things planning and all things development. His earlier professional career in planning certainly got him to the point where he could be a leader, and he has been, but his calm personality and persistence consistently and gently nudged our discussions forward to help us get to decision points. His ability to synthesize the input of commissioners when preparing to make a motion, of which he must have made thousands over the years, and his attention to detail when forming those motions, in my mind, is legendary and a practice we should all hope to emulate. Really, though, it's his selfless service to our community for these many years on Plan Commission that impresses me most. For residents, members of Plan Commission, it can sometimes be an ever-changing set of competing interests and stakeholders, including working with a rotating cast of alders. Brad rose above all of that and always advocated for what he thought was correct, while at the same time always looking forward, even in those few times when votes didn't necessarily go his way. Even in defeat, his logical arguments could often result in better conditions of approval and appreciation of subtleties that may have escaped the rest of us. New commissioners may already have recognized this, but Brad gets around. When there have been controversial development proposals, or even those more mundane that some aspect of which have piqued his curiosity, he travels to the proposal site, he walks around the nearby neighborhoods to judge potential impacts for himself. His dedication to this volunteer position never ceased to amaze me. So thank you, Brad, and I hope we get all the benefit of seeing you around town and even perhaps bending your ear if you'll allow us. I'll see the rest of you later in June. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And I would really like to second everything that Patrick said. Brad really has been a model commissioner. Other commissioners could do well by modeling their approach on what Brad did. He has shown himself continually to be very knowledgeable. He asks appropriate questions. He clearly communicates what his perspective is to help the rest of the commission understand where proposals are going and what concerns there might be. And as Patrick said, Brad clearly knew how to make motions, and he did make, I think, probably thousands of them. So I can only second what Patrick said and say, thank you very much for being a member of the Plan Commission for so many years and doing such wonderful work. So thank you. The next item on our agenda would be taking a look at schedule of, first minutes of the May 8th regular meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing no raised hands, is there a motion to approve? Moved by Commissioner Cantrell and seconded by Alder Duncan. I will assume unanimous consent on approval of the minutes unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. Next is schedule of meetings upcoming. We have a regular meeting on Monday, June 12th and 26th, and on July 10th and 24th. Both of those, all of those are at 5:30, and they are virtual meetings. We do have an upcoming special meeting, which is Thursday, June 22nd at 5 p.m., and that one will be in person, room 215 at 215 Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, the Madison Municipal Building. We will move on to the consent agenda. It is the custom of the Plan Commission to remove from the agenda those items on which staff believes an application has had sufficient review to warrant approval with all of the conditions placed upon it by various city departments, and on which the applicant accepts those conditions, and there are no individuals who have registered to speak in opposition to the item. Those items are placed onto a consent agenda along with referrals, and they are addressed at the beginning of our meeting. Then people interested in those items can disconnect. Of the items before us today, the following are proposed for the consent agenda, and I will read the agenda number. So number 2, number 3, and then number 7 for referral, and then agenda items 10, 11, and 12, and then for referral, agenda items 13, 14, 15, and 16. Are there any requests for separation? Seeing no raised hands, I will read each of those items on the consent agenda into the record. Again, agenda item 2, Legistar 77787, amending the master list of street names and designations and amending the city engineer's street numbering map referred to in sections 10.34 paren 2 and 10.34 paren 4 Madison General Ordinances, naming a new frontage road along the Dane County landfill, Mahawk Way, and the easterly extension of the frontage road along the Yahara Rivers Golf Course, Mill Pond Road. That's in the 16th Alder District. Agenda item 3, Legistar 77788, determining a public purpose and necessity and adopting a relocation order for the acquisition of land interests required for the construction of safety improvements at the intersection of South Gammon Road and Watts Road, located in part of the northwest quarter of the southwest quarter of Section 25 T7N R8E in the city of Madison, 19th Alder District. And then for referral to the June 12th meeting at the request of the applicant, again, agenda item 7, Legistar 77013. And then on the consent agenda, agenda items 10, 11, and 12, which are all related. Agenda item 10, Legistar 76506, located on Honey Harvest Lane and Turning Oak Lane, and various other parcels in the Acacia Ridge subdivision, First Alder District, approval of an alteration to an approved traditional residential planned district master plan for the Acacia Ridge subdivision to reflect the proposed Acacia Ridge replat number 4 subdivision. Agenda item 11, Legistar 76589, approving the preliminary plat and final plat of the Acacia Ridge replat number 4 on property generally addressed at Honey Harvest Lane, Turning Oak Lane, et al. In the first Alder District. Agenda item 12, Legistar 76508, again located on Honey Harvest Lane, Turning Oak Lane, etc. in the first Alder District. Consideration of a conditional use in the traditional residential plan district for a residential building complex containing 10 single-family detached dwellings on 2 lots in the proposed Acacia Ridge replat number 4. And then items 13 through 16 are related and were referred to this meeting by the Plan Commission on May 8th, 2023. However, on May 16th, the Common Council referred Legistar 77208 to the June 12th Plan Commission meeting. For consistency, the Planning Division recommends that the Plan Commission refer items 13 through 16 to June 12th, 2023. So again, it's agenda item 13, Legistar 76899, agenda item 14, Legistar 77208, agenda item 15, Legistar 76900, agenda item 16, Legistar 76903. I'll open the public hearing. There are no registrants wishing to speak. I'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Commissioner Cantrell. Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Duncan. And I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. Moving back to our agenda items coming up. Agenda item 4 under new business, Legistar 77441, adopting the final report of the Task Force on Farmland Preservation. First, we will hear from Heather Stouter. Heather.
Thank you, Chair. I do see that several members of the task force are in attendance this evening, and we'll leave it to them to summarize their work. I just wanted to thank them for their work, and then also to point the Plan Commission to the memorandum that Kate Smith from the City Attorney's Office wrote, just clarifying that the adoption of the report this evening by the Plan Commission and then the subsequent adoption by the Council isn't necessarily an endorsement of a lot of the recommendations within the report. Rather, if those recommendations come back as resolutions or ordinances in the future, staff at that time can provide the Plan Commission with analysis as is pertinent to whatever comes forward in the future. This evening, the Plan Commission's role is simply to adopt or recommend to the Council to adopt the report, signifying that the work of the task force is completed. Commissioners may make comments, but not being asked to analyze the draft recommendations in the report at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. And we do have several registrants wishing to speak. The first is Nan Fay, West Wilson Street, Madison, in support, wishing to speak. Nan, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. You hearing me okay?
Yes, we can.
Very good. Thank you. I'm here this evening as the chair of the Farmland Preservation Task Force, and I very much appreciate Heather Stouter's introduction to this so that it's clear what the task of the Plan Commission is. A little about me. In recent years, I have chaired the Madison Food Policy Council, the Plan Commission, and the Community Gardens Committee. I also served as an interim director of the city's Department of Planning, Community, and Economic Development from 2019 to 2020. As we've described in our report, this hardworking and highly focused group met over 30 times in the last 7 months. Members were chosen for their expertise in farming, sustainability, land use planning, conservation, and real estate development. Everyone participated in full task force meetings as well as smaller teams focused on land access, land characteristics, and reviewing the existing policy landscape to answer questions of importance to the group. As you can see all of that from the report itself. I want to do a special shout out, however, to planning staff Jeff Greger, who it was an enormous help to our committee to work this hard and get this much done in such a short time. He was really invaluable to our process. The purpose of the task force was to provide tools for city decision makers to address the obvious tension between the desire to develop buildings and tax base with the need to maintain community and climate resilience by growing food. While these interests clearly compete for land, rather than being seen as mutually exclusive, they need to be balanced. The city has already recognized this tension in adopted plans and made significant efforts to support growing food on public land for decades. It has also provided zoning categories for urban agriculture that respect nearby uses, but there's been no clear guidance on the value of maintaining farmland in the community or factors for evaluating development proposals on productive soils. So as we've said, this report sets forth recommendations. These are ideas, suggestions, and tools that could be helpful. We were aware that adoption of the report does not commit anyone to do anything with these recommendations. We're hoping that initiative will be taken by alders, boards, commissions, and committees, or residents, at which time the particulars of any recommendation can be more fully explored. And we've provided the over 200 pages of research and resources in the appendices to support those discussions. So our request is that you recommend adoption, and it will be on the council's agenda for June 6th. One final comment: the only opposition to the task force and its work that I'm aware of has come from Smart Growth, Inc., but its stated objections appear to really misunderstand our work. We are not setting aside large parcels of land, changing zoning, or forcing incompatible uses. We are making an effort to educate city staff and resident members of relevant boards and commissions.
Nan, that does conclude your available time. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry. Whoa. One more sentence.
Thank you. The next registrant is Mark Voss, Mayfield Lane, Madison, in support, wishing to speak. Mark, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Mark Voss, and I am an urban farmer with Voss Organics and a real estate agent with Latitude Regenerative Real Estate. Thank you for the opportunity to voice my support for the adoption of the final report of the Farmland Preservation Task Force. I served as a citizen member of the task force, and my work group focused on the importance of gaining access to land in the city for growing food for market, as well as gaining tenure to stay on the land. Another aspect of my focus was researching the growing trend in real estate of developing subdivisions with farms as the anchor amenity. Growing and marketing food in the city is not mutually exclusive to building housing, even affordable housing. A growing number of forward-thinking municipalities and developers are working together to preserve food-growing, productive farmland in concert with clustered housing that is adjacent on land that is less well-suited for market farming. This adjacency, farming in close proximity to where food is consumed, elevates quality of life, regional resilience, economic and physical wellness, and awareness of where food comes from. Such developments are in high demand and should be encouraged as a way to achieve a win-win for development, housing, and farmland preservation. Please see the 2 Urban Land Institute reports that are included as supporting resources in the report to learn more about best practices in agri-hood development, as well as case studies around the country that support the integration of farming in urban environments. I will end by sharing that this task force worked well and was high functioning thanks to the leadership and contributions of citizen members, helpful staff, and leadership. It was a privilege to serve on this body, and I hope the recommendation will be considered, passed unanimously, and acted upon. Thank you for your consideration of the adoption of the report. I urge you to vote in favor of adoption.
Thank you, Mark. Our next registrant is Bill Connors, West Main Street, Madison, opposed, wishing to speak, representing Smart Growth, Greater Madison. Bill, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes?
Very good. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. Smart Growth appreciates that the focus of many of the task force's recommendations is on making land the city already owns available for urban agriculture and creating incentives to encourage property owners and developers to agree not to develop land, but instead protect it for urban agriculture. However, Smart Growth objects to one recommendation that was added very late in the task force's work process. This recommendation reads, evaluate land added to the city through recent annexation and anticipated future annexation for potential urban agriculture preservation/protection. This recommendation appears to invite a controversy each time a developer applies for rezoning land from temporary agricultural use to a zoning district that permits development. Like the controversy that happened when a developer applied to rezone the Ramish Farm property for development, and opponents of the application sought to force the developer to set aside a substantial part of the property for urban agriculture. That process was dysfunctional, and it should not be repeated. If it is repeated, it will discourage developers from even seeking to create new residential subdivisions in Madison. Many residential subdivision developers will choose to work in other cities and villages in Dane County rather than deal with such obstruction, which would result in more greenhouse gas emissions in Dane County. Smart Growth asked the task force to change the wording of this recommendation by adding at the end of it, exclusively through framework area plans, neighborhood development plans, or other plans approved by the Common Council and incorporated into the comprehensive plan. This additional language would make clear that designating properties for farmland preservation should be done only through a planning process, such as the designation of a long-term agricultural use area in the draft Reiner Neighborhood Development Plan. It also would make clear that if a property has not been designated for farmland preservation through a planning process, the issue of farmland preservation should not be interjected into the consideration of an application to rezone the property for development. On a broader note, preserving land for urban agriculture within Madison will result in more farmland elsewhere in Dane County being developed, because preserving farmland in Madison will not decrease the demand for more housing as the population of Dane County continues to grow. Forcing more housing development further away from the core city will result in more greenhouse gas emissions in Dane County. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Bill. The next registrant is Marcia Caton Campbell, International Lane. In support, wishing to speak, representing City of Madison Farmland Preservation Task Force, Rooted. Marcia, you have 3 minutes.
And you can hear me all right then?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the adoption of the Farmland Preservation Task Force's final report. I am the executive director of Rooted, Madison's largest urban agriculture and food systems organization. I'm a member of the Dane County Food Council, and I'm also trained as an urban planner and have been working in the areas of urban agriculture and community food systems since the late 1990s. For the past 7 months, I've been privileged to serve as a member of the City of Madison Farmland Preservation Task Force, and particularly privileged to help draft the final report. For decades, housing, and especially affordable housing, and urban agriculture have been pitted against one another as competing and incompatible uses for the same parcels of land. However, housing and farmland preserved for food production can coexist quite harmoniously, as Madison's Troy Gardens and countless other agri-communities around the United States have demonstrated. They also contribute ecosystem services such as stormwater management, reduction in the urban heat island effect, they preserve habitat, and they foster biodiversity. In addition to their food production capabilities, urban farms like Troy Gardens and Farm on Madison's North Side can be community gathering spaces that bring people together and provide social outlets for underrepresented groups. For urban farmers and prospective urban farmers, many of whom are growers of color, certainty about access to productive land, permanence of growing sites, and clarity about where growing conditions are safe are especially important. For market growers, food production is part of their livelihoods and contributes to better access to affordable, nutritious, and culturally specific fresh foods in Madison's food access improvement areas. Dollars spent locally recirculate many times over in a city's local economy and support those growers, food entrepreneurs, and other local businesses. The task force's extensive report contains recommendations in key areas of land use planning, staffing and task forces, land leasing and soil contamination, and zoning and land use. As Chair Fay observed, voting to adopt this report does not commit anyone to doing anything with any of these recommendations. Nevertheless, I urge you to vote in favor of recommending adoption of this report by the Common Council to set the stage for city agencies and departments to further pursue recommendations that create a more favorable and certain environment for urban farming in Madison. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcia. That concludes. Oh, wait, no, there is another speaker, Eric Paulson, DeMilo Way, Madison, in support, wishing to speak. Eric, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. So, as you may remember, I was the Plan Commission's representative to this task force. And when I was asked by Alder Evers and now Vice President Figueroa Cole, I warned them that I was a little skeptical of urban agriculture, but I would keep an open mind. And actually, I wanted to say that I'm very happy with the way this turned out. And so tonight, I'm mostly just here to answer any early questions the Commission might have, since we're not asking you to dig deep into the specific recommendations or vote on endorsing anything. But as I mentioned, I'm really happy with how this turned out. I was very concerned about it being pitched as sort of a impediment to housing, and I don't think that happened at all. I think if there's an underlying theme here, it's to make sure that food production is part of the overall. The benefits of food production are recognized as an overall benefit and worked into some of the city's goals. And there's lots of great reasons for this, from sustainability, from economic development, from cultural expression and cultural heritage preservation, and just recreation. I'm happy to talk more about that if the Commission would so desire. But we're a growing city, and we need to be thinking about how to make the most effective use of our land, and that might be doubling up where we can, or maybe finding ways to get additional benefits from parcels that are benefits from parcels that are adjacent to things, and as well as making better use of some of the land we have and removing impediments that might be in the way, including finding ways to use land that currently isn't be housing and won't ever be housing, but might not be doing much right now. Again, you'll see more of this down the road as specific recommendations are picked up by staff, by alders, by other BCCs, perhaps by the Plan Commission. So tonight, I'm just looking to make a recommendation to ask the council to adopt. I wish the motion had actually been to just accept. It would have been, I think, a little clearer. But asking you to recommend to the council to adopt the report. And since I have a little bit of time left, I will go off script a little bit and just say thank you to Commissioner Cantrell. It was a pleasure serving with you while I was on the commission. And I will be a third to say what a wonderful time it was, and best wishes to whatever you've got. And with that, I we'll wrap up. And I don't think you will see me again for a while. I know I've been here twice since leaving not long ago, but I think this will be it for me for a while. So thank you all. Have a great night. And I am available to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Eric. So are there questions for any of our registrants? Commissioner Cantrell. You're muted.
Okay, so sorry. Okay, I got it now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Looks like I'd get this down after 12 years, but anyway. This is for you, Nan. Can you finish your comments on your reaction to the smart growth letter that we received?
Yes, and thank you for the opportunity, Brad. And I'll just chime in that you were a wonderful colleague when I was chairing the Plan Commission as well. I'm sorry to see you go. My final comment was this, that their reduction of these issues to housing versus obstruction to housing, which is words they've used, as you know, really obscures important issues and stifles opportunities for creative balancing of other community needs. Their principal objection is to that recommendation that Mr. Connor specified. That actually is a suggestion to be proactive in an effort to avoid the very controversies that the developers fear, like the Ramish Farm project that prompted the formation of this task force. That was my closing sentence. And I was going to say thank you and I'm happy to answer questions. So I appreciate the opportunity to finish.
Could you further enlighten us on that recommendation that he's kind of highlighted? It's evaluate land added to the city through recent annexation and anticipated future annexation for potential urban agriculture preservation protection.
Yes, the recommended the comment about it being coming into the report late was actually completely explained at a meeting on May 10th, that we had asked a question of staff about how many acres were expected to come into the city by various annexations, and it just our timing was bad. Staff was on vacation, and so the recommendation came in at what seems to be the last minute. And all we were doing was hoping to gauge how many acres there might be coming into the city and what they might be zoned, so that we could think about providing some opportunity for planning staff to get ahead of that land coming into the city, so that it wouldn't be a last minute rezoning request that would suddenly throw the question of housing or agriculture in a very binary way up in front of the decision-making bodies. But there would be some time to sort of set the stage for what's happening on the edges of the city, and for the decision makers to be using some of the tools and guidelines that we've sort of recommended in our report to evaluate those lands that might be coming in, and see whether there are ones that are prime agricultural soils that are located along transit corridors, all those sorts of things that would make them good candidates for a potential agri-community, as you heard a couple of my colleagues reference. So that was the purpose of including that recommendation, was really to be proactive and try to avoid the kind of last minute controversies that happen when development is proposed on a farm.
I'm assuming you're going to be asking staff when they prepare the 12 area plans around the city to look at those specific areas that might be appropriate as you just outlined.
Yes, and we did actually make up a specific recommendation on our list that questions about agricultural potential be included in those area planning conversations with the public. I recognize there are 12 of them. They all have a a year in which they'll be brought up. But I think if urban agriculture could be added to the list of things that are proposed, and the community is invited to comment on those things during those planning processes, it's our view that would be really valuable information.
One last question. I grew up on a small farm, and my father wasn't a farmer, but he rented out his property, and every year we had large gardens, and even today my 95-year-old mother has a garden, and I help her put it in and stuff. And at least for the city of Madison, we have such significant amounts of single-family residential lands around, and it looks like education of how to garden and that sort of thing would be important, because actually we have a lot of resources just based on the land, and not everyone wants to garden, but at least it provides an opportunity for people who may want to do that, to provide fresh vegetables on their own property. And I didn't see anything like that in the report. Is that too specific?
No, not necessarily. One of our focuses was to try to provide urban agriculture opportunities for people who don't live on single family properties and can't garden in their backyards. We have significant immigrant communities in Madison that are in that category, and it's difficult for them to find land to grow on. And that's actually in the survey results that we have did with Rooted. And the other recommendation, so there's some recommendations about trying to invite these communities, these BIPOC communities that have not been able to get in on even the agricultural lands that are owned by the city and leased to farmers. We're trying to, a whole set of recommendations in what we call the Ag Leases Memo is all about trying to expand that process so that those 200 plus acres might be available to a broader range of growers. The other recommendation that I think speaks to your question is we've been trying for some time now to get the city to figure out a way to approve small hoop houses that residents can grow, can extend the growing season on their properties. Mm-hmm. And because of the building codes that at the state level, that is, considered some kind of a structure that has to be taken down at the end of a season. And it becomes quite burdensome to ordinary people who are trying to just extend the growing season in their backyard garden. So there's a provision about that as well.
One last thing, I'm glad to see that you put in that the city's parkland is an opportunity for community gardens. I know that down where I live, there was a garden provided in Birmingham Park, and that's worked out, I think, great. And I think actually it should be expanded. But I was glad to see that's a recommendation, and hope the city expands the opportunities for gardens, community gardens in the park, since we have so many, and they're really in every neighborhood. So I think that's an opportunity that we should totally investigate. And thank you, Nan. I think this is a great report.
Thank you, Brad. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cantrell. Thank you, Nan. Are there any other questions? Alder Field.
Yes, I wanted to thank all the registrants for showing up and talking to us and taking our questions. My question is for Eric. So based on a comment that you had made when you were talking about the plan. So my attention is, I think, similar to some others in the area of, land uses and farming competing with housing. And so I appreciate some of what I've been hearing about that. And one of your comments was about spots that aren't housing and would never be housing. And I'm wondering if you can elaborate on that point and any kind of features or conditions that might make certain land more suitable for urban agriculture and not housing, or more of just kind of what you meant there.
Yeah. This might also be a better question for Nan to answer, but there are a number of parcels that the city owns that we are reasonably certain aren't ever going to be housing projects or new developments, but that there are some impediments that we just need to sort of iron out some things bureaucratically. In the report, there's a link to a memo from the Food Policy Council, probably ghostwritten by the EDC folks, on some things that we could consider changing in just that leasing policy to provide more certainty for making agricultural leases. So I would probably stop there and maybe refer you to Nan for maybe some additional thoughts.
Sure, if Nan's willing to answer.
Nan?
So, Alderfield, what part of your question remains after hearing from former Alder Paulson?
Yeah, I think maybe I need to check out the memo about leasing policy, but I'm interested in knowing more about what features of certain property around the city or that the city owns might make it unsuitable for housing, but suitable for urban agriculture.
Okay. There's quite a lot of detail in that document that speaks to different properties that the city owns for different purposes, and they're owned by, there may be 4 or 5 agencies that own land that they're not prepared to utilize yet, that were in agriculture and have been staying in agriculture because it's frankly less of a burden to the city to let a farmer go on farming them until they're needed. So in the Ag Leases Policy Memo, we identify some timing factors. So, for instance, if a parcel is identified as coming into being a conservation park in the next five years, that should get different treatment than something that might just stay a borderline buffer between another community and Madison. That's a very sort of gross generalization. But beyond that, we also talk about things like, what is the quality of the soil? Is it some of the prime agricultural soils that we have in Dane County? Or is it near a wetland? Is it a steep slope? Those are the kinds of other considerations that really would help to identify the land that is best suited for agriculture, and as opposed to land that could be used for other purposes and might need, different kinds of ways of addressing those characteristics, but that isn't detracting from the really prime agricultural soils in our area.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for any of our registrants? Commissioner Cantrell. You are muted. Yeah, usually when I hit the unmute, it works, but it's not working tonight. So
okay, I'll remember that.
Okay.
This is the last question I had. Obviously the county is a big factor in farmland preservation, and I think that they're doing good work right now. Are there any recommendations in the plan that the city and the county will be working together in doing that? Maybe this is for Nan again.
Thank you. I'm happy to take that question, and there is one. I'm quite sure it's toward the end of our recommendations. Yes, it's the number 5 recommendation in the zoning and land use section, okay, which I believe is the final recommendation in the matrix, which says the city of Madison should study the feasibility of string of acronyms, PACE, PDR, and or TDR, and potential partnerships with the county.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, farmland preservation, Dane County has some of the best farmland in the world here. So that I think is a very responsible recommendation and should be explored. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cantrell. Are there further questions? Seeing no raised hands, I'd be looking for a motion. Commissioner Cantrell.
I will recommend that the Plan Commission adopt the final report of the Task Force on Farmland Preservation.
Seconded by Alder Field. Would you like to speak to your motion, Commissioner Cantrell?
Sure. I think this is an excellent report. I do think that we should be careful in balancing our housing needs with the preservation of farmland, especially in the urban areas, because we don't want to push development further out into other in areas outside the city where development is much less dense. So, but I think that there are opportunities within the city that we should explore, and I think that this provides a good basis for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. I just wanted to add a brief comment. I really appreciate all of the hard work that was done in this report. Clearly, it was a lot of time and a lot of analysis. I learned a lot going through it. I agree. I think there's some opportunities within the city going forward if, resolutions or things come forward coming out of this report. I would, as has been discussed, be a little cautious of preserving too much in favor of development. Troy Gardens was mentioned. I think that's a very unique community that has a lot of great things. It's also 30 homes on 30 acres. And I like the idea of agri communities, but I'd be looking for more density in those in the future. That was my only comment.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any more comments before we come to a vote? Seeing no Alder Evers.
Thank you, Chair. As the primary sponsor for this task force among the Common Council, I do want to just say something about the work of that many of you have acknowledged. In the 4 years I've been on council and now going into a third term, I've served on several committees and a couple of different task force and various ad hoc efforts within neighborhoods. But I can honestly say that this was the most effective, hardworking group of citizens, elected officials, cooperating with staff in a collaborative fashion of any that I've been associated with in the past. This sets a very high mark for the kind of quality of work done under pressure to stay within the charge that was given to us. These are important considerations. If you know me well, you know that I'm strongly in support of more housing of all different kinds and levels, price levels, et cetera. But we do have competing interests and we do have controversies. It stands to reason that not everything that gets built or made within the city will be a house. There will be some schools. There will be some warehouses and medical centers and things like that. But there is a need. We learned about this more directly during the pandemic, to acknowledge the need for local food production. And the report is also predicated on the idea that while the financial and monetary benefits of housing are quite clear and other types of development, the non-tangible benefits, while not easily calculated, those benefits of stormwater retention or carbon capture or even pollination are important ecological and sustainable considerations in any growing community. So I think that we best think of this, and the report really strived hard to do that we not be stuck in an either or mentality, but to realize there is room for nuance. There can be situations that are kind of both and, this notion of agri-communities and agri-hoods, and that it's not a zero-sum game. It need not be anyways. But I mainly just wanted to say that I really appreciated working with Nan Fay and her work as chairing this committee and the other members of the task force. I appreciate your support. And I want to close by saying, in my time on council, appearing before Plan Commission, I've appreciated Commissioner Cantrell's civility, kindness, thoughtfulness, and his service to our community. And I wish him well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Seeing no other raised hands, we will come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion does pass unanimously. I would also like to say, I thought the report, if you haven't read through it, the report was very well done and certainly brought a lot of experts, knowledgeable people together. The next item on the agenda is agenda item 5, Legistar 77479, accepting the report titled Comprehensive Plan 2023 Progress Update. And we will first hear from Kirsty Lotch. Kirsty.
Thank you, Chair Zellers. So I will share my screen and go through a presentation. All right, are you able to see the full screen view?
Yes.
Perfect. So I'm Kirsty Lotch. I work in the planning division, and I'm here to talk about the 4th annual progress update report for the comprehensive plan. This is a report that we've published each spring to report out on progress made towards implementation of the comp plan. And I just wanted to briefly start by distinguishing this topic with the next item on tonight's agenda, which have very similar sounding names. And it could be confusing. So first we'll be talking about the progress update, which is an annual report. And the next item on the agenda is about the interim update to the comprehensive plan, which will focus on making some minor revisions to the plan itself. But I'm going to jump into the 2023 progress update report now. This progress update annual report is something that we use to report out progress on the comp plan. We coordinate with about 30 staff across different city agencies on this interagency effort. And it really just overall summarizes implementation highlights of the work that the city's done to implement the comprehensive plan. So for anyone that's not familiar, cities in Wisconsin are required by state statute to have a comp plan on the books. And comprehensive plan covers a variety of topics like land use, transportation, housing, economy and opportunity, and many more, and includes priorities to guide decision-making and investment for the city. So the Imagine Madison Comprehensive Plan was adopted by the Common Council in August of 2018, after more than 18 months of community engagement. And just talk a little bit more about that. We did pretty extensive public participation to find out what matters most to residents and pull together recommendations into this comprehensive plan. We especially worked hard to make sure that we were reaching underrepresented folks in that outreach. Particularly BIPOC communities, people living with lower incomes, youth, and so on. And through this document, the goal is really to complete the feedback loop with residents who were involved in the comprehensive plan project back in late 2016 to 2018. So during the Imagine Madison process, we received feedback from the community, did our best to incorporate that feedback in the plan, and attempted to demonstrate how that resident feedback was incorporated into the plan. Now the city's been working on implementation for several years, and it's very important that we report out on what's been accomplished. So we close that feedback loop. So we try to keep this annual report relatively concise so that it's accessible to a wide audience, and focus on covering the major highlights relating to implementation each year. So as I mentioned, this is our 4th annual progress update. If you pull up these slides in Legistar, there's active links in there so you can look at the reports from the previous 3 years. But the 2023 progress update focuses on implementation from the calendar year 2022. So the progress report is organized by the 7 elements of the plan. This year, the health and safety element is included for the first time, and that was adopted by Common Council in 2022 after about a year-long process to develop those recommendations. So yeah, you'll see that near the end of the document this year. I'm going to just briefly walk through the draft report and kind of just cover some of the highlights and explain what's all included. So each element of the 7 elements includes a spotlight project, which basically summarizes a project in which we made major progress in 2022. So for land use and transportation, that project was the Metro Transit network redesign. So the city redesigned the bus routes to better meet the needs of the community, increasing access and bus route frequency, decreasing travel times, and improving the experience of riders. And this is something that, through the Imagine Madison process, we particularly heard from BIPOC folks that we needed to make improvements to service to peripheral areas. So that was another thing that was improved through the network redesign. Then next, each element has approximately 8 or so brief summaries of other implementation highlights. And I'm not going to cover all of them. That would take quite a while. So we'll just very briefly hit the highlights. I'm sure you're all familiar with the city adopting Complete Green Streets in 2022, adopting the TOD overlay, TDM ordinance. I should probably go through the acronyms for anyone that's new. Transit-oriented development overlay, transit demand management ordinance, and then I just wanted to point out for the city's goal in the comprehensive plan relating to our distribution of infill versus edge development. In 2022, we issued permits for about 2,300 new housing units, and of those, about 73% were located in infill and redevelopment areas. So, generally within the Beltline and Interstate, and about 27% were located in edge development areas, which is very well aligned with our intent to focus a majority of our new housing in infill areas. And then each element also includes a table that tracks the lead agencies for each action in the plan, and it also has a column for the status to let the public know what progress has been made, whether it's in progress, not started, ongoing, or complete. I'm not going to cover all of this. That's a lot of detail, but you can see all of that information in the report if you pull that up. So then the neighborhoods and housing section, we feature the building inspection and work done by building inspection and other city agencies to make improvements to the rent abatement program, which eased the burden on renters so that they're more able to apply for and receive that rent abatement in appropriate cases. And then just some of the other highlights in neighborhoods and housing. We committed $9 million of affordable housing funds and $2.4 million of tax increment financing to several developments seeking low-income housing tax credits, which is going to add about 500 rental units, and 2/3 of those will be affordable at 60% AMI. In 2022, the city also approved the location for the first purpose-built homeless shelter. The council approved that in 2022. And there were also some other improvements made by building inspection and Department of Civil Rights to streamline some protections for tenants against retaliation. In the economy and opportunity section, we spotlight the Madison Forward Fund. So this was the launch of a guaranteed income program, which is part of the Mayors for a Guaranteed Income project, which many other cities are also participating in. So the results of that study will be reported out to the community and that program network as well. Some other highlights in economy and opportunity, we relaunched the Community Facilities Loan Program, which provides low-cost financing to neighborhood centers and other neighborhood-based projects. We used ARPA funds for the building improvement grant to support building renovation for small businesses, and then committed an additional $4.5 million for the public market, along with Dane County contributing an additional $1.5 million to close the funding gap. Under the culture and character section, you're featuring the Parks Alive events that were held in parks in the summer of 2022. There were over 31 events, and somewhere around 3,000 residents attended those. They were very, very successful and brought together residents, community stakeholders, and staff to celebrate and come together. Here we go. Some of the other highlights under this section include restoring the Gates of Heaven building, which is located in James Madison Park and is historically significant as the first synagogue in Wisconsin. Another highlight here is after the absentee ballot drop boxes were banned, that we repurposed them into artistic statements, which you can see in one of those photos there. And we awarded $450,000 of National Endowment for the Arts program funds to 22 organizations with the goal of expanding arts industry jobs. In the green and resilient section, we summarize the many improvements to what was the former Glenway Golf Course. It's completely redesigned into a multi-use park with an aim of making golf more accessible to a variety of players, and includes many programmed activities and aims to improve access for more community members, as well as focused on ecological restoration. Some of the other highlights in green and resilient, we increased the sustainability of residential development projects that are funded through the Affordable Housing Fund and Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program. We installed a clean beach treatment system at Warner Park Beach and the city was awarded $41.6 million for all electric buses for the upcoming BRT system. For the effective government section, the spotlight's on the Sustainability Campus Partnership. So the city and Dane County reached an agreement to transition part of the Yahara Hills Golf Course to a landfill and sustainability campus, featuring a sustainability business park that focuses on recycling and reusing materials, as well as a planned composting facility. Some other highlights in effective government, Madison and the town of Cottage Grove established an intergovernmental agreement that runs for 40 years to reduce conflict and provide each party with more certainty in providing services and considering land use decisions. And then the Streets Division improved the large item pickup program, establishing basically a scheduling system, which has a variety of benefits like improved communication with customers, weekly pickup opportunities, and much more efficient deployment of city vehicles for that service. And then finally, the final element under health and safety, the Madison Community Alternative Response Emergency Services Program, or the CARES program, was expanded in 2022. So I'm assuming most people are familiar, but a community paramedic and crisis worker respond to calls for service involving nonviolent behavioral health emergencies. And the city was able to expand the service to cover the entire city, as well as add a second CARES team, and hours of service were expanded as well. Some other highlights in the health and safety element. Madison approved the Vision Zero action plan, which focuses on eliminating traffic deaths and serious traffic injuries. And since we've started implementing some of those improvements to Vision Zero in 2020, we have seen a pretty significant decline in traffic fatalities and serious injuries since. In addition, public health, Madison-Dane County has been providing Narcan and related Narcan training, as well as started offering fentanyl test strip kits and developed a fentanyl test strip pocket instruction guide, which in speaking with our public health folks was a very important thing to complete in 2022. And then finally, the last thing to just mention is Madison Public Library continued to partner with Ho Chunk Gaming to celebrate Indigenous people in the region through a variety of programming and activities within Madison libraries. So that's an overview. Tried to keep it pretty concise, but I will turn it back over to the chair and see if there are any comments or questions.
Thank you, Kirsty. Are there any questions of staff? Any questions? Seeing no raised hands, thank you for the complete presentation. Kirsty, is there a motion? Commissioner Cantrell.
I will make a motion that the Plan Commission accept the Comprehensive Plan 2023 Progress Update.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Spencer.
And I just want to say that this is a great update and a great analysis. Thank you, Christy.
Thank you. Alder Knox, did you wish to comment? I thought I'd seen
yes, I was a little slow finding the raise your hand. I apologize for the motion. I think this is a great comprehensive plan, but when I went through it, something to me that was noticeably absent has to do, and there were a lot of things in here that obviously impact our population. I just did not see anything that addresses the issue of youth empowerment, youth education, and youth recreation. So am I missing something in this plan, or is there some area that I can look to see some of those issues addressed? That's for staff.
Kirsty, could you answer that, please?
Yeah, I can answer that. It's a great question. We have some recommendations within the economy and opportunity section. I won't be able to list them off the top of my head, but I know that there's some things in there about different things related to education and access to childcare. and other programming. There's at least a few recommendations that focus on that. And then the culture and character section also has a couple of items that are related to just general programming and involvement to the wider community. I don't know if it necessarily calls out youth specifically, but there are a few things within the comprehensive plan itself that address those items. The progress update this year included one item related to STEM programming for Madison students. But we are only able to cover so much, but I do appreciate your comment, and it's noted.
Okay.
So would that be in the culture and character element? What elements would I find those?
Sure. So the economy and opportunity element, I would say, would be the element to look in. And I think there's also potentially one or two items in the culture and character element.
Thank you.
You can look at the table to see that list of all of the recommendations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Moving back to the motion, did anybody have comments on our motion? Alder Field.
Yeah, I wanted to thank staff because I had some early on questions a few weeks ago, just kind of about the orientation of the report and how they compile all the information and display it. And so I have a new appreciation for how very much work that is. And so thank you for putting together this document for us.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any further comments before we come to a vote? Seeing no raised hands, we will come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. The next item is Agenda Item 6, Legistar 77810, a resolution adopting a public participation plan for the City of Madison Comprehensive Plan Interim Update 2023 and authorizing the Planning Division to draft amendments to the text and maps in the 2018 Comprehensive Plan. Kirsty, are you up on this one too? Okay, please go ahead.
Yes, I am presenting this item as well. Okay. I'm going to share my screen. Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Just want to get my other monitor situated as I transition from the other presentation. Okay. I just wanted to start by first saying that staff appreciates the guidance that Plan Commission shared on this topic at the April 24th meeting. So between the April 24th Plan Commission meeting and now, we've introduced an authorizing resolution for this project, the Comprehensive Plan Interim Update, and as well as the draft public participation plan. So I'm going to briefly cover a few things. First, just want to run through a review of the scope of the interim update. Then I'll provide a summary of the guidance that PC provided, the Plan Commission provided at the last April 24th meeting, and then talk about the public participation plan a little bit more in depth. So as I summarized in my previous presentation, the comp plan was adopted in 2018. The growth framework is one of the main components of the comprehensive plan, and it guides private development through the generalized future land use map, which is certainly pretty pertinent to Plan Commission's work. The scope of the comprehensive plan interim update is to essentially complete an interim update to that 2018 comp plan. And we do a full update every 10 years. That's what we did. That's what we adopted in 2018, a full decennial 10-year update. But in addition, we have an interim update, which is this 5-year mark post-adoption. And since it's been 5 years, it's time to work on this shorter term update to the plan, which is a bit more narrowly focused than a decennial update is. which is what we did in 2018. So just going to cover some of the main highlights of the scope here. As I mentioned last time, we will add in the health and safety element that was adopted by Council in 2022. We'll also focus on the Generalized Future Land Use Map, or the GFLU map. And a big component of that will be including revisions to the GFLU map from our recently adopted plans, which will help us to more clearly convey adopted city land use policy and make it easier for the public to understand our adopted city land use policy as well. So just to sort of align our plans with the GFLU map. And then finally, this process provides an opportunity for the public to propose revisions to the GFLU map as well that will be considered by the Plan Commission. And then I just wanted to note that a similar 5-year update process was completed in 2012. We received 9 proposals from the public, and 2 of those 9 proposals were approved. It's hard to say if this process will have a similar amount of proposals from the public, but just kind of wanted to provide that context that's how the process went in 2012. As I've said, the interim update will propose revisions to the comprehensive plan itself, but wanted to reiterate that the scope is somewhat narrow. Unlike the decennial update, it mostly focuses on the generalized future land use map. But there are also some other types of revisions, including some limited text edits, mostly within the growth framework chapter of the comprehensive plan. And we don't anticipate making edits to any of the goals, strategies, and actions in the original 6 elements of the plan. So we'll add in that 7th health and safety element, but don't anticipate making edits to the original 6 elements of the plan. So regarding the staff proposed revisions to the GFLU map, we included the list in the materials from the April 24th meeting. And a majority of those revisions will, again, address incorporating the 17 plans or plan amendments that have been adopted since the comp plan was adopted in 2018. That's the main focus. And I'm not going to run through the generalized future land use map itself in any detail here, but just wanted to point out that the black outlines note locations where there are proposed revisions. And during the next part of this project, we plan to release an interactive online map. And that online map will make it a lot easier to sort of understand and see what's being recommended for change. So that will be released in June. So you can look forward to looking at that, which will be a little bit more understandable than having to rely on a PDF map. So now I'll quickly run through the feedback that Plan Commission received on April 24th. The feedback that Plan Commission provided to staff on April 24th. So at the April 24th meeting, we outlined some of the revisions, and you can also find this info in your materials that are on Legistar. But items 1 and 3 here are both related to addressing potential redevelopment of special institutional uses. And as we've already been talking about this evening, as Madison continues to have major shortage of housing, Plan Commission, generally agreed that this topic should be addressed, that we should provide some guidance relating to potential redevelopment of special institutional uses that end up being no longer in use. And similarly, commissioners showed support for adding language under the description of employment, the employment land use, to guide the consideration of residential development in employment areas as well. So general support at the last meeting for those revisions. Regarding this next one, revising map note 4, Plan Commission had varying opinions about this one. There was not consensus about this topic. So map note 4 is currently applied to a few locations, most on the Isthmus, I would say Tenney and Marquette areas, as well as the near west side. And the map note mentions that the house-like residential character of these areas should be retained. And that development should maintain the single family 2-flat, 3-flat development pattern. So there was not consensus on this item, but I could provide some background about it if folks wanted to discuss this more in depth. We also shared the proposed criteria for reviewing the GFLU revision requests from the public, and Plan Commission suggested that we make one minor change to the 5th item listed here, which was to add the word generally at the start of that sentence. So it would be generally larger than 2 acres and meets other criteria. So there was general agreement for that change. And then to move on to some of the information related to the public participation plan. This is also included in your materials, but just got a bit of an outline of the outreach and public participation we'll conduct here. So we'll post a project webpage with an interactive map, send project email updates, including to our list of neighborhood contacts, which was something that Plan Commission mentioned last time as feedback and is now included in the updated public participation plan. We will create handouts and distribute a variety of materials at the public libraries, hold virtual meetings, and all of the Plan Commission meetings that we discussed this topic at will be open to the public and will meet the minimum requirement of noticing those 30 days in advance, which is required by state statute. So just wanted to point out that we're, sort of meeting the state statute requirements for public participation and going well beyond those requirements as well. And yes, we'll also use traditional media and social media to spread the word about the topic. And just I'll close with this last slide here. Something that staff is aware of is needing to make it clear to the public that this is an interim update. It's not a full update, so the scope is limited. We'll be focusing, as I mentioned, on the growth framework and GFLU map. And we want to emphasize that the upcoming area plans are potentially, a better way, or at least a good way for making geographically specific land use changes, because those will be rolled into the GFLU map after each area plan is adopted. So we've got the planning framework area plan map here, but each area plan process is going to discuss land use changes with the community more in depth. So there'll be able to be a little bit more discussion with community members and make it a bit easier to talk about land use changes at that scale, as opposed to a project that's at the citywide scale. So it's one of the sort of differences between the interim update and those area plan processes. So we intend to then, as those plans are adopted, update the GFLU map accordingly as they are approved. And I think that is my last slide. So I will hand it back over to the chair.
Okay, thank you, Kirsty. Are there questions, comments, input? Commissioner Spencer.
Just a curiosity in general on where you're getting the majority. Oh, there you are. Just getting the majority of your public participation. I know you're doing, social media and Zoom meetings. And I was at an open house last week on the West Side. Are you getting a lot of social media input, or are you still getting the majority of public participation from things like, open house and emails and sort of traditional public participation? I can't think of the word, sorry. Where are you getting participation from?
Yeah, I can answer that question. So we haven't started public participation even really in earnest yet for this project. But for our other planning projects, I would say that it's been a pretty even split between folks that attend virtual meetings and attend meetings in person. We get a majority of the feedback through those venues. For the most part, our social media is more about awareness, I would say, like letting people know about these projects, and then sort of directing them to our project web pages or surveys, or asking them to attend a virtual or in-person meeting. So most of the engagement itself is not done through social media. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Spencer. Are there further questions, comments, input? Seeing no raised hands, I'm looking for a motion. Commissioner Cantrell.
I will make a motion that the Plan Commission adopt a resolution on the public participation plan for the City of Madison Comprehensive Plan Interim Update 2023, and authorize the Planning Division to draft the amendments to the text and maps in the 2018 Comprehensive Plan.
Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Figueroa Cole. Would you like to speak to your motion, Commissioner?
Only that a good job on the presentation, and good luck on the update.
Okay, thank you. Are there other comments before we come to a vote? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless there's a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. Next is agenda item 8, Legistar 77018, located at 506 through 518 East Wilson Street and 134 through 148 South Blair Street, 6th Alder District. Consideration of an alteration to an approved planned development district specific implementation plan to allow outdoor recreation, weekly outdoor events, and special seasonal events in the parking lot for the adjacent restaurant taverns. And we will have information provided by staff member Tim Parks. Tim.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Plan Commission. The item before you is the request by Bob Worm, who is the owner of Essen House Come Back In and Up North Pub, to increase the programming that is currently allowed in the parking lot that is located off of Blair Street behind the 3 restaurant taverns that are predominantly oriented to East Wilson Street. The requests before the Plan Commission, there are 3 of note. 2 of them are already approved, but have been brought under the umbrella of the current alteration request. The first was approved in 1996, and it allows for up to 6 outdoor events or festivals, quote, some of which coincide with traditional local sports celebrations, end quote, The 6 outdoor events were included in the final zoning text approved with the specific implementation plan for the construction of 11 townhouses that became the Germania condominiums on South Franklin Street, which are part of the planned development, but have since been spun off, if you will, since the construction of the townhouses and declaration of the condominium. Under that 1996 approval, there were 6 undefined or unspecified events that were allowed. The applicant is now proposing to specify at least 4 of the 6 events with the date and duration of up to 2 of the events to be determined. The 6 events would run from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. They would be some of them at least weekend events that could begin on Friday and end on Sunday, except for Memorial Day, which would end on Monday. And an event tied to the Great Taste of the Midwest Beer Festival, which could begin on Thursday but end on Sunday. There is an event layout plan that is attached to the PDSIP alteration file that shows the layout for those 6 events. The applicant also has an approval dating back to 2014 that would be incorporated into this approval for sand volleyball, which would fall under the broad umbrella in the zoning code of outdoor recreation. There is a sand volleyball pit that has been in the parking lot for a decade now. The applicant has submitted a revised letter of intent dated May 5th that suggests that the volleyball would occur from 5:30 to 10:30 p.m. Monday through Friday and from 12 to 9 p.m. on Sundays. And there is a seasonal layout plan in the materials that show how the site would function during the outdoor recreation events. And then the applicant is asking to introduce music and live performance on a stage in the parking lot on Sunday, Monday, and Thursday evenings from 4 until 9 p.m. And that stage is shown on the seasonal layout plan included in the materials with the PDSIP alteration. The original request was for March 15th to November 1st. You saw probably in Alder Rummel's comments submitted prior to the meeting a reference to a shorter time period that the applicant proposed at a community meeting that was held last Thursday evening. I'm sure that the applicant will be able to speak to that during the public hearing. Staff believes that the Plan Commission could find that the standards for the PDSIP alteration are met. However, we are encouraging the Plan Commission to consider the input that they've received up until now in writing from members of the public, as well as any testimony that will be received tonight, in considering in particular whether or not to introduce the live musical performance Sunday, Monday, and Thursday evenings. We believe that given some past conduct by the applicant, that it would be appropriate for the Plan Commission to consider a trial basis if they're inclined to approve the SIP alteration to introduce the live music. We are recommending a 1-year trial that would go through whatever period is approved for calendar year 2023. Right now, the applicant is asking for March 15th through November 1st. That may be shorter as we go along tonight. But regardless of whether we're approving live music for 3 nights or less, or for fewer hours than the 4 to 9 that are currently proposed, staff is recommending that the Plan Commission give it a 1-year trial. I will clarify before I conclude that there are 2 existing outdoor uses that are approved, that if the current alteration request is not approved, specifically not introducing the live music performance events in the parking lot 3 nights a week, the other 2 uses would be able to continue. And I will note that the benefit for the 6 seasonal events being incorporated under any approval that might be given tonight is that we will have an opportunity to identify what those are. Right now, since 1996, they have been undefined. There's also the opportunity to bring the outdoor recreation under the umbrella of this approval, centralizing all of the outdoor uses of the parking lot into one set of rules. Staff is suggesting that it would be appropriate to end the sand volleyball at 9 o'clock, just so that there is a consistent stop time for everything, regardless of what night of the week. Everything would end at 9 o'clock, be it for sand volleyball, the seasonal events, or any live music that would be approved. I will note that failure to approve the alteration request does not extinguish the 1996 and 2014 approvals. It would be only if the alteration before you tonight was approved in some form and the applicant meets those conditions of approval, that those 96 and 2014 approvals would effectively go into history. So just keeping in mind that there's really no benefit of approving the current alteration request with no live music, because the applicant won't probably accept those conditions and limit the open hand that they have right now. So just something to consider as the Plan Commission goes forward tonight. I'll leave it there and note that we are recommending a series of conditions on pages 6 and 7. Among the other comments that we've received from reviewing agencies, and I will be happy to answer any questions after the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. We do have some registrants. I will open the public hearing. The first registrant is Robert Mayville, South Franklin Street, in support and wishing to speak. Robert, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. I'll try to be brief. And so I want to say I support live outdoor music at these properties. I've been a neighbor of the space for 18 years and enjoy what it provides. But I want to make it more of about what does this mean to the community instead of just to the immediate neighbors? Does this add something? And I believe it does. There's been a huge popular demand over the years for live music out there, especially since COVID, and people are becoming more aware of open spaces instead of confined indoor spaces. And I would add that there are people with smaller children that like the outdoor music things for their children, for themselves, but do not feel like they want to take the small children into interior spaces such as bars or stuff. Downtown has concomitant sound. There's always going to be volume of anything down here. And this is part of the reason we moved downtown is there's life. And I would hate for us to have a lowest common denominator of bothering no one for anything that happens in our downtown community, but also in our city. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Robert. The next registrant is Kevin Burrow, University Avenue, Middleton, in support wishing to speak, representing Kanothi Bruce Architects. Kevin, you have 3 minutes.
All right, good evening. This is Kevin Burrow. Tim, could you call up our slides for this? What you see before you is our proposed layout for the outdoor venue. We have both the seasonal summer layout and then the 6 event layout. I just wanted to clarify the location of the seasonal layout with regards to the outdoor seating and the outdoor sand volleyball area, and how it basically does not disrupt any of the existing parking other than a handful of stalls located closest to the comeback in, where we do temporarily relocate some handicap parking in order to provide a safe outdoor seating area and connection to the outdoor volleyball area as well. One thing to clarify in regards to the staff report comment of amending the end time for the outdoor sand volleyball use, we are not in support of that at this time due to the fact that the existing sand volleyball leagues have already been established for the year 2023 and have a league that starts at 9 p.m. and will be finished by 10:30 as has been previously approved. So for this 1-year trial period, we do respectfully request that the existing timeline be maintained to 2023, as it would create a hardship for many people that have already signed up for the Sand Volleyball League for this year. and we could consider any amendments in the future, but for immediately right now, we do want to maintain the current time frame for the outdoor use for sand volleyball. All the other timeframes as listed by Tim are acceptable in regards to how we spelled out the use of this outdoor space. But this basically, as he mentioned, provides a cohesive area for understanding the approvals for the use of the outdoor venue. Go to the next slide. Please, this shows the seasonal layout for the event layout for the 6 events, and where you can see where we have expanded some outdoor seating areas for larger events, boarding off a larger portion of the parking area, but still maintaining safety via barricades and barriers, providing outdoor seating, tents, and performance areas as well. We would also respectfully request that the 6 events be maintained as have been allowed for almost 20 years now out in this parking lot area. We certainly do know the 4 events that have been clarified in the 2 alternate events. One occurs every few years in Madison, and we just want to have the flexibility for providing a venue for larger gatherings. Understanding we can cap it only at 6, but other larger wedding potentials, family reunions, etc. So we would ask that these 6 events be maintained as been previously approved. So we also have Bob Worm available to help answer questions as we get into further discussion on this. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Kevin. Our next registrant is Bob J., South Franklin Street, opposed and wishing to speak. Bob, you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, well, this is a historic neighborhood and it's changed a lot since Mr. Worm first opened his businesses many years ago. We now have a lot of density in housing, and people want to live comfortably in their homes without excessive noise. And adding more music events is not going to benefit that atmosphere. And we understand that there's going to be noise downtown. There's sirens, there's trains in this neighborhood. We get that. But adding more live music events is not going to enhance the neighborhood. We do support the arts and local businesses. And so we want people to understand that we're not against music at all. And I want the commission to consider the residents that live next to this property, take them seriously. We know there's a lot of live music fans out there, and they want to see this expand, but that's just not going to work for this neighborhood. So we're in favor of keeping the 6 events a year and of adding like one more night a week for live music. And if you add that all up, that comes out to like 22 events per summer. And that's about what the neighborhood can support right now. And I was reading some of the other comments from people who are in favor of expanding this music. And one of the comments said that, the residents should just buy earplugs. And that's not acceptable, to be trying to live in your own home and have to wear earplugs. That's a little bit too much to ask for the people that live right next door to this property here. So keep the 6 events. We're fine with adding one more music event per week. And that's all I have to say. Thanks much.
Thank you, Bob. The next registrant is Robert Worm, East Wilson Street, in support, not wishing to speak, but available to answer questions, representing the Essen House Come Back In Up North Bar. And Christina Pirius, East Wilson Street, in support, not wishing to speak, but available to answer questions. Are there any questions of any of the registrants? Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. This question would be for Kevin Burrow. Kevin, I'm seeing on the seasonal summer layout for the live music events, 2 performance spaces, one behind Come Back In, and then one kind of between Essen House and Hotel Ruby Marie. Are those both being used? Are they, or Are they used one at a time? What's the difference about when they are used on those proposed 3 nights a week?
Thank you very much for that question. They would not both be used at the same time. This is to provide flexibility for placement of the outdoor entertainment. So it's basically just to provide an opportunity to have one closer to the comeback in or one closer towards Hotel Ruby Marie. As far as which ones would be used for which evenings, that is to be determined, but perhaps if you want some more specific detail, we could ask Bob Worm to try and address any of the specifics for that.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have any? No, I guess not. Further questions? Commissioner Cantrell.
I guess my question is, you've asked for 3 nights a week for the special event music event, and I think the alder asked if he would consider less, fewer days, and I guess the answer was no, at least according to her memo. Why did you recommend Thursday and or Sunday and Monday? And if the commission decided to give you fewer days, which of the days would you be most amenable to give up?
Kevin Burrow, do you want to take that?
I would actually ask that Bob Worm respond to
that. Okay, Bob Worm.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We suggested those 3 nights just because they're low-key nights here in downtown. Customers and guests at the hotel are looking for things to do on Sunday and Monday nights. A lot of the restaurants and bars are closed those nights, and it gives the downtown a little bit more flexibility. We chose Thursday nights because it was a night that sometimes we used to have a regular band do it, and also because it doesn't conflict with all the other bands on Fridays and Saturday nights. So we're not competing with other bands and other events that's going on downtown. The reason why we do want 3 nights is because you have to publicize it. You have to get it out there. Get 1 night a week. It's not worth, how can I say, it takes a lot of public knowledge to get people down here. And I think the nights that we have are real low key type nights.
And Bob, the question included, if you had to give up 1 night, which night would it be? Or would you just not do it at all?
I would just as soon not have that question asked me, ma'am.
So
would you like me to say not do it at all? Would you like to say I would like to all 3 nights?
No,
I would like to have all 3 nights.
I understand that. The question was, so if you had to give up 1 night, which night would it be?
I think what I've heard from Mr. Worm is Sunday and Monday nights are the nights that would be most important. But I guess I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that's kind of what I gleaned from the comment.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Cantrell.
Thanks.
Are there any further questions? Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. While we have Bob Worm on, I just wanted to follow up on my earlier question, particularly for the performance space behind the comeback in that's closer to the residences there. Is there a rhyme or a reason for when that space is used versus the one behind Hotel Ruby Marie? Will there be a set schedule, or does it just vary?
Bob Worm, could he be unmuted?
Bob, you should have a prompt to unmute.
Okay.
Am I there?
Yes, you are.
This is where we had the bands since 1995 on those 2 areas. when we had it closer to the condominiums there, which is next to come back in, it was very favorable because at that time we used to have a tent. During this last couple months, the city took away the tent. So I'm a little nervous now the music is not going to be muffled as much. If we have it over at up north, by Ruby Marie, it's farther away from the condominiums, but it bounces against the Madison Gas Electric buildings immediately. So we'd like to have a little bit of, not so much a choice as much as see which is the better spot to have it. The better spot to have it was actually closer to condominiums. But now without the tent, we're kind of undecided. So if we had it 2 or 3 nights, one of the nights definitely be next to the Hotel Ruby Marie. Monday for sure would be at the Ruby Marie.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any further questions for any of our registrants? Alder Duncan.
With regards to the sand volleyball and outdoor recreation, I had heard that you had stated that you all had a 9 o'clock kind of, I guess, themes. Start of 10:30.
Kevin, can you take that one?
I can start, but perhaps Bob can supplement. So,
okay.
Unfortunately, there's been leagues that are established, and each league has a set start time. So there is a 9 p.m. starting league, which has a numerous teams associated with it. So that entire league would be displaced, which is why it's a hardship for this year, as in all the planning went out in March and April to establish these leagues.
Did that answer your question, Alder Duncan?
It did. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions of any of our registrants? Alder Rummel.
Hi, everyone. To follow up on the question of sand volleyball, you're not asking for Saturdays. Is there an opportunity to rearrange the late nights to Saturdays, or is it too late in the season to even consider that opportunity?
I would ask Bob to speak to that one, please.
Okay. Could we unmute Bob Worm, please?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. We've did volleyball for 10 years now, and we've had this schedule permanently since then. When we had the people do their applications in March, this is what we did in the last 9 years. We've never had a complaint about the volleyball, and we've always Saturday is the hardest to fill because a lot of these people, they do extracurricular activities. They're just not available. So the Sunday through Friday is the best for them. The 9 o'clock one, I mean, sometimes these people get over by 9:30, 9:45. Doesn't take long. It usually takes about 30 to 45 minutes for a game to handle. If we would have known way in advance, but we've been doing this for 9 years to let us know now the last 12 hours that we're supposed to change time, we have 120 applicants or players that would probably either quit or they wouldn't know what to do. I don't really know what to do if you stopped it because we're losing the whole game. Thank you.
Did you have any further questions, Alder Rummel? No. Okay. Alder Field.
Yeah, I just noticed that Christina Purius has her hand up, and I was wondering if we could maybe yield a little time for her and unmute her to see if she wanted to talk about that one.
There have not been any questions for her. Did you have any questions?
I can explain.
Did you have any questions for Alder?
Yeah, maybe can I just ask her why her hand is up?
Okay.
I just wanted to explain a little bit more about volleyball. These people paid for the money for the league in March, and it was sold out by March 20th. They signed a contract that stated the times of the league. If we were to give it up this year, we would be breaking our contract with them.
That answered my question.
Okay, thank you, Alder. Are there any further questions for any of our registrants? Seeing no raised hands, I will close the public hearing. Are there questions of staff? Commissioner Cantrell.
Has the city received any complaints regarding the conduction of the volleyball at this location?
No.
No. Okay. That's all for now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Are there further questions of staff? Alder Duncan.
So, with there being no complaints from the volleyball aspect, would we potentially be able to change the recommendation back to the 10:30 just for the sand volleyball aspect so that they are not breaking their contracts that they have in place?
Sure. I mean, the reason for putting it together was to streamline things, especially with the formal request to add the live music. Maybe a little bit of a trade-off, but it would certainly be within the Plan Commission's purview to strike that from any action it would take on the alteration.
Thank you.
Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. 2 questions. So it sounds like the volleyball league was announced or folks signed up in March. But this has been a discussion point for quite a while with a request to resubmit. Can you just quickly run through, I know it's in the staff report, kind of like when the issue first came up and the idea to kind of combine these all into one came to light?
Well, we've been, and Matt Tucker is on the call and can certainly weigh in on his staff's inspection or enforcement. Basically what has been transpiring for the last couple of years. But the original request to submit the alteration to introduce the live music, bring the sand volleyball and the 6 seasonal events under one set of approvals and plans was submitted on March 27th, was originally scheduled to be before you at your May 8th meeting. But there was an error in the original letter of intent. And when the applicant clarified it, it was too late to bring that question before you on May 8th. But I think maybe the thrust of your question is when did they submit the minor alteration? And that was not done until March 27th.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. That's helpful. And one clarification for the 9 p.m. end time for music events. I saw it clarified, but just want to confirm and have it on here that the 9 p.m. is not just music ending, but stuff, cleared out and people cleared out. So music ending earlier than that, correct?
Presumably, yes. But it would be our intention that at 9 o'clock, the performance ends and that the area is cleared of attendees and that there's no, amplified sound of any kind while they're, clearing the area, cleaning up afterwards, things like that.
Okay. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Commissioner Solheim. Commissioner Cantrell.
There was some discussion about a tent being provided at one of the performance areas. And maybe the city said, no, you couldn't do that. Maybe Matt Tucker could explain that or comment on that?
Matt?
I can. Thank you. Just before I get into that, though, can you guys just clarify this 9 o'clock thing and make it very clear that it is like music ends at 9 and then they have time to take down, or they have to be taken down by 9? Just in your deliberations, please do that. I'm still unclear. For game days, football Saturdays, we give them till the end time and then let them take stuff down after that set time for what it's worth. Second question, tent. The tents are permissible. They're approvable. You have to request them. They go to the fire department. If they're the bigger type tents, the little 10 by 10s, or this, they had, I think, like a 10 by 20 pop-up tent, a little bigger than a farmer's market tent. Those are, just over the performers for weather or sun or whatever. Those are also permissible if they're properly anchored down. We would look at those. I think Mr. Worm said we took away a tent. We didn't take away a tent. We asked for them to gain approvals for a tent. And you go through a process to get your tent approved like any place else in the city of Madison. And this would require minor alteration or some kind of a site alteration and approval by the fire department, but those are minor things.
Thank you, Matt.
One last question for Matt. It sounds like that this bad behavior has been going on for some years, actually. And I know that enforcement is slow sometimes, but because you have the liquor license kind of holding over their heads, it seems like that would be the real trigger. And actually, ultimately, it was the real trigger here to bring the applicant to the table. But I'm really grappling with the bad behavior that we've had over the course of, so many years now. And so anyway, I don't know if there's a question, but I guess could you give us a little bit more enlightenment of this?
Sure, I can try. So the issue came to our attention in September of 2021. There was recurring loud music happening in the parking lot, and we started to receive complaints. So we're really at the end of the music season, and we reached out to the team, Angie and Bob, and said, "Hey, you guys need to gain approvals for this." We got to the end of the season, and they shut everything down. And I reached out to them in January of 2022 to plan to get this on the books if this was going to happen again. For reasons that they own, and I have no idea, they chose to have the live music again in 2022. Started probably around May-ish. We were called out a number of times. The police were called to many of the events for noise violations or noise disturbance. We went out in the end of May and wrote a notice of violation to cease the events. Their lawyer appealed that notice to the Zoning Board of Appeals, which is something you can do that stays enforcement. And then they delayed that. And it wasn't until we had them, we discussed the matters related to their liquor license that they decided to end the events, and which is disappointing disappointing. It's easy to say that. And then that brings us around to where we are today. We had hoped to get an application from them much, much sooner. We were working with them through the winter, but they submit when they submit, and that's what set it to this date, outside of the one little problem with the letter of intent that Tim put forward.
Thank you, Matt.
Did you have any further questions, Commissioner Cantor?
No other questions right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of staff by others? Commissioner Alder Rummel.
Thank you. Commissioner Cantrell kind of got around the edges of this, but it struck me at the neighborhood meeting that this is an unusual situation. it's a planned development that has, according to Tim, expired. But it enabled the Plan Commission to have oversight over this parking lot. And when I was first alder, at some point in that 2014 period, the sandball became a thing, and we went through a process. I don't even remember all the details, but we went through a process with neighbors and to get that that request approved. But I don't think I knew at the time that they were doing ongoing outside music. Maybe I just don't think I ever thought about that. So I don't really think that over the many years they were just really, really bad actors. I think they just got used to doing certain things. And, if you look at their liquor licenses, they're pretty, compared to how we put conditions in now, they're pretty, pretty quiet on many topics. So, one of the things to me that's good about this, I'm getting to a question, is that it'll go to ALRC. But I guess the real question I had when I sort of started thinking this through is, why is the Plan Commission, why is this a PD-SIP? Why isn't this just an alcohol license review question where they're seeking outdoor uses and change of license premises and all those other steps that happen? And I think that, like I said, Commissioner Hinchell kind of hinted at that, but I just thought I would put that question on the table for Mr. Parks or Mr. Tucker. Thank you.
I can jump in to start, and I'm sure Matt can fill in any gaps I leave. But the general development plan for the site was originally approved in 1994, and it is expired. But the site is still subject to a specific implementation plan that was originally approved in 1996, and that doesn't go away just because the GDP expires. What the GDP expiring means is that the 5-story mixed-use building that Mr. Worm was approved for in 1996 along Wilson Street, and a second residential building that was planned to go in the Blair Street parking lot in 1994, that those could not be built in accordance with that approval, because you have 5 years. Now you have 5 years, and actually even back in 1996, you had some period of time to build out the approved specific implementation plan. Those facets of the 1996 approval are largely gone, but the use of the parking lot, which was originally approved in 1996 with some approval given to use the parking lot for those seasonal events in 96, and then again the approval in 2013 for 1 year that was then extended in term without end in 2014, again using the 1996 approved parking lot for sand volleyball with the minor or modest change to the plan to add the sand volleyball courts. We're still basically working off of the 1996 SIP. And so, I would clarify, where that, what's expired, what isn't, what we're still under. And certainly if Matt has anything to add, or subtract, that could be too.
Can't subtract, Tim, not from you. But I can add that it is zoned what it's zoned. And normally when these things come in front of the city's plan commission, they're that conventional zoning, they're like conditional uses or requests for special events or something like that. You've seen these before in the past. But this is zoned what it's zoned. So it carries that plan development zoning. And the only way to allow what is being requested is through an alteration. One last little piece to add is that, we can't really accept or understand how long the music has happened there. I don't think it's fair to say this has been going on for many, many years as has been represented, because it's never been identified within the plan development zoning. It does not exist anywhere. We did a very thorough plan development review in 2013 when we did a sand volleyball project. You would have thought that it would have come up that there was live music outside happening. It ain't in there. Nothing. There's also no entertainment license that relates to outdoor music. What's been permissible at these establishments is indoor music, seating outside, and then in outdoor dining outside, and then in 2013 and 2014, sand volleyball.
Thank you, Matt. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify because Matt asked about it. I'm seeing in the staff report, one of the conditions noting for the end time that for all of the events shall end in the area cleared of attendees and outdoor amplified sound and use of sound producing devices stopped by the 9 p.m. end time. So I am interpreting that as music is off and people are cleared by 9 p.m. Is that a correct interpretation?
Yes, and that staff would be able to, clean up the space, restore it to whatever, after use condition it would be, but that, there wouldn't be the amplified sound, music or whatever while people are filtering out. And I suppose the only clarification, and I'm hesitant to do that because we don't try to be too fine with outdoor, eating area approvals. But that, somebody gets a drink at 8:57, they're going to finish it inside. They're not going to finish it in the area because they paid for it. So if they're going to serve up until the last, then, those people need to chug or they need to take it inside. But that at 9 o'clock, they're not going to be in the parking lot quaffing their final brew.
Thanks, Tim. That's helpful.
Commissioner Cantrell.
Was the outdoor dining area ever approved? I don't remember ever seeing that, but obviously they have a lot of outdoor dining area.
Matt?
Yeah. So the one of the earlier plan development conditions allowed 30 tables outdoors. And there's a few blueprint style plans, Brad, if you can remember your days back in the blueprint time, that showed round tables kind of in the area behind the Comeback Inn and the Essen House, a few. Okay. But it just said 30 tables and left it at that, and then round tables. So you could make some assumption, but it's nothing like we do today. We do a much more detailed approach about occupancy load, numbers of people. We just have much more precision, but in 96 we were probably a little looser with that.
Okay. And I'm assuming when the ALAC looks at this, they'll be looking at that outdoor service area as a part of the premise, right?
Yes, they're going to look entirely at the outdoor activities. The outdoor service area will be part of the licensed premise, and there are 3 licenses, and so they have to differentiate which area is associated with the music, which I think they've already chosen how to figure that out. They'll have to navigate that liquor licensing situation. So there may be outdoor seating that's not associated with where the music is, that is outdoor dining seating where people are enjoying a beverage after 9 o'clock, but it's not associated with the music. It's just going to be a little complicated.
Okay. And I'm assuming the sentence that Nicole read, Commissioner Solheim read, would be sufficient for you for the end of live music? Yes, okay.
Yes. Well, we're good on that. I think we know what is intended, which is live music ends at 9.
Okay.
So that seems reasonable.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions of staff? Any further questions of staff? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion. Commissioner Cantrell.
I will put together a motion here. I recommend that the Plan Commission find the proposed alteration to allow outdoor recreation, weekly outdoor events, and special seasonal events in the parking lot for the adjacent restaurant tavern at 506 to 518 East Wilson Street and 134 to 148 South Blair Street is consistent with the specific implementation plan approved by the Common Council and the Plan Development Standards, and approve the request subject to the following conditions and staff report with the following change. that the seasonal outdoor events, the days be reduced to Sunday and Monday only, not Thursday, as requested by the applicant.
Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Solheim. Did you wish to speak to your motion,
Yes.
Commissioner
Yes.
Cantrell?
I'm not recommending change to the volleyball at this time. I think the applicant should be on notice that next year the time will be 9, and that any arrangements with the volleyball teams should take that in consideration. And I guess that should have been part of my motion. But this year, since he's already made arrangements for 10:30, and we've received really no complaints regarding that, I think that 10:30 at this point in time is appropriate. I've also suggested or recommended that the special event days be limited to Monday or Sunday and Monday. Those are days that many restaurants in Madison are closed, and I think that it makes a lot of sense for outdoor entertainment on those days. I didn't recommend Thursday because I think that we've had issues here. And maybe they were related to COVID and the need for special events having to be outdoors. But in any case, I think that more adherence to city staff's warnings should have been more adhered to. So that's why I'm making the recommendations and that I've made here. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cantrell. Tim, did you have something that you?
I just wanted to clarify that Commission Member Cantrell was referring to the outdoor live music performances on Sunday and Monday. And yes. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alder Field.
Yeah, I wanted to chime in. So are we in discussion right now?
Yes.
Yes.
I wanted to chime in support of keeping the 9 o'clock volleyball league because it does seem like it would be a big disruption to take that part away. And I wanted to offer an amendment to the motion, if that's how we want to if we could handle that now, to add a 1-year trial period on this approval.
I believe that's part of the
conditions. Yeah.
Oh, it is. My bad. Okay.
The conditions that staff put on it. So that's already on it.
Thank you.
Any other comments, discussion before we come to a vote on this motion? Alder Duncan.
I just wanted to clarify what I heard. So we are leaving the sand volleyball at the 10:30 end time, or we're pushing it back to the 9.
10:30.
10:30. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Rummel.
Thank you, everyone. I support the motion. You know, and the idea of the consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds. I thought 9 o'clock should be the answer, but learning more about like the existing conditions of these contracts, I think it's fair to at least allow that this year to continue, and I would support that. I do support 2 evenings a week. I know there's probably neighbors who would like less or none, but I believe, 2 is a reasonable effort to try and see what it's like in a year, and that people will then have a good sense about it going forward. I do kind of want to say that I think the last 2 years were just a kind of like outlier. I think post-COVID, I think, I don't want to like give excuses for anything that the non-compliance I'm aware of that happened, because I do believe it harmed the good name of Bob Worm and his team. To some degree, I'd never really seen where residents are signing letters to you and asking to have their names redacted. I don't think I've ever seen that before, and that I found that really quite troubling. And having served as an alder of a district that has a lot of alcohol licenses, I was always rather impressed by the seeming good relations that Bob and his team had with the neighborhood. They were always a little forgiving of each other. So hopefully the trust can be regained, and neighbors know that if there's noise complaints, they know now to call the police. They have a neighborhood officer contact if they want to pursue that more. And one thing that you all didn't mention that I want to say is in the staff report, there was one of the comments about, really, we don't really want this use for the parking lot in the long term. We really want to encourage the developer to keep looking, or the owner to keep looking for options. And I know it's been kind of hard, but I just, in my letter to you all and to in my blog, I said I'd be willing to help Bob and his family figure this out. I'm not saying I can, but I'm certainly willing to work on it, as that seems to me the ideal outcome. Thank you for your time. And Brad, just thank you for everything. In my head, I always joke to myself that when Commissioner Cantrell agreed with me, I knew I was right, because he didn't always, but when I served on Plan Commission. But you've always been very thoughtful and, thinking things through and set a high standard. So you will be missed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. I just want to add one question or comment. If this is a 1-year trial period and we are considering implementing a 9 p.m. end time for volleyball after that, would it make sense to have something in there to prevent the same situation from occurring a year from now where folks are already signed up? I don't know if that could be incorporated perhaps in a condition where, you must be notified before the 2024 sand volleyball season begins or something, but I think that would be appropriate.
Tim.
Yeah, I'll try that one. I think the Plan Commission has made it clear for 2023 that 10:30 is okay, and anything later than that isn't. I would advise the applicant to file their 2024 application sooner than March 27th, and that if they promise folks a 9:30 or time slot or 9 o'clock time slot for volleyball next year before it's approved, it'll be on them, not on you, the Plan Commission. So I think you've made it pretty clear, and that if Mr. Worm and company want to take their chances promising something later, then it won't be on you if he does not get it.
Got it. Thank you, Tim.
Commissioner Cantrell, you're muted.
Okay, thank you. Also, I want to make it clear that the motion incorporates the agreed upon special event duration from May 15th to September 15th. I don't remember seeing it in any of the conditions, and I know that's something that Alder Rummel talked about with the applicant, and he agreed to. And I want to make sure that that's, if it's not in here, that it's part of the motion that the seasonal outdoor events are from May 15th to September 15th.
Okay, thank you.
And if my second agrees to that, that's great.
Okay. I will consider it in unless I see an objection from any of the commissioners. Okay, that's part of the motion. Thank you. Alder Rummel, did you? No. Okay. Are there any other discussion points, comments? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote. I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, motion passes unanimously. Next is agenda item 9, Legistar 77224, located at 3822 Mineral Point Road, Fifth Dollar District. Consideration of alteration to an approved plan development district specific implementation plan to allow a general retail tenant in the existing commercial building. I am going to go immediately to registrants for this and open the public hearing. The first registrant is Alex Salutos, Hammersley Avenue, Madison, neither support nor opposed, and wishing to speak. Alex, you have 3 minutes.
Thanks, Chair Zellers. Is my microphone on?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. I live close to this property and just heard about the proposal a few days ago. Please amend the PD zoning text to allow this bookstore to thrive and grow here, including the sale of ancillary items with reasonable limits on the hours of operation. Do not rezone it to general retail. There are some legitimate issues with the staff's recommendations for allowing general retail on this property. Even with the new zoning code, PD zoning is appropriate and desirable in certain circumstances. This is a perfect example where it is the best solution. The property was zoned residential. The original user was a permitted use. There are single-family homes on 2 sides, a church on the 3rd, and a single-story office on the 4th. When the original user left, PD zoning was used to allow a small civil engineering firm ordinarily not allowed in residential zoning to use the property. They had regular office hours Monday through Friday, no retail traffic, nominal commercial traffic, and an occasional FedEx or UPS delivery. The next user was a similar office commercial use Monday through Friday, no retail traffic, and occasional FedEx UPS delivery. Because they performed engraving, the PD zoning was modified to allow that. These were low-intensity office commercial uses, not retail businesses. There was no retail traffic, no evening hours, no weekend use, and minimal commercial traffic. What about the neighborhood plan? I was on the steering committee for the plan. It recommends NMX zoning and general retail on the property. I can tell you firsthand that these issues were not supported by the steering committee or the neighborhood. I vividly recall staff explicitly telling the steering committee they'd make the decisions on what went into the plan. It was staff's decision to recommend NMX zoning and general retail here. Finally, there's little public comment on this because the first time the Alder communicated anything about it to constituents and the surrounding neighborhood associations was last night in an email at 9:35 p.m. In conclusion, PD zoning makes perfect sense for the 2 previous owners and the proposed use. Please don't open the doors approving this. Please take the time to be thoughtful about it. Please approve amending the PD zoning text of this property to allow this very low intensity user to thrive at this location so they can move forward without delay. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. The next registrant is Graham Pettit of Glenway Street, opposed, wishing to speak. Graham, you have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I wrote opposed, but I'm really excited about the proposed tenant that's going in. I'm really just more opposed to the rezoning piece. And if possible, I don't really have anything more to say, but if possible, I'd like to give my time to Alex if he has anything more to add.
Thank you, Graham. Graham is the last registrant wishing to speak. Rick Jacobs of Herrick Lane, Madison, registered in support, not wishing to speak, but available to answer questions, representing the book deal. Are there questions of any of the registrants? Seeing no raised hands, I'll close the public hearing. Are there questions of staff? Commissioner Cantrell.
It seems like that we just amended the use list of the PUD on the prior ones. Why wouldn't we just do that on this one to allow a bookstore?
Heather?
Sure. Just for clarification, what has been requested is exactly that. It's changing the use list of the planned development zoning on this site so as to allow for general retail, which includes a bookstore. So today, the use that is allowable within that building, it's been office uses for years. Our plans show support for neighborhood mixed use. That's just the land use category that the plans recommend. But really narrowly, what's before the Plan Commission this evening is indeed a change to the allowable uses within the planned development zoning. So it's not rezoning the property to a mixed-use zoning district. It's broadening the list of uses allowable within this planned development zoning. And so I think the question really at hand is, would the Plan Commission prefer, as staff has recommended, to broaden that use list to include general retail, which could include some adaptation of the space over time to different retail uses, or would the Plan Commission end up preferring to really create just a very narrow opportunity here for a bookstore specifically? So staff has recommended, let's change the use list within planned development zoning to include general retail, to keep that a little bit broader over time. And I think what you're hearing from folks who have spoken tonight is a caution that, they're in support of just a bookstore, but maybe not the unknowns that might come down the road if general retail is allowed.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Did you have any further questions, Commissioner Cantrell?
I guess not at this time. Just one question. General retail, that's a pretty all-encompassing category. What would that include? I mean, it sounds like it would open up for a number of uses. And a bookstore, although it may be general retail, it's a pretty light use.
Yeah, so basically it would include things like, shoe stores, office supplies. It's a very small property. It's about a 5,000 square foot space. And so I would say the space is going to be probably more limiting than the use list, so to speak. One thing it doesn't include is grocery. That's a separate use within the zoning code list of uses. I suppose it could include hardware, appliances, yes, a variety of retail. What's that?
A dollar store?
A dollar store, if there was a dollar store that would fit in a 5,000 square foot building, yes, that would be general retail.
Okay, thank you.
Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you, Chair. So Heather, when you say we either zone it or we create a bookstore, do you mean like you create a new use for a bookstore?
What was that last phrase?
So if we don't want to change the zoning, are you suggesting that we create a use category called just bookstores?
Oh, I get the question. So this is a planned development zoning. It's a zoning district specific to this very site. And today it has a list of allowable uses that don't include any retail uses at all. It includes some office uses within the planned development zoning on the site today. With any planned development zoning district, a piece of that zoning is the list of allowable uses. And so what the Plan Commission is being asked to do is expand that list of allowable uses for this very specific property at 3822 Mineral Point Road. The applicant wishes to put in a bookstore. And I think that's what's broadly supported by folks. I think typically, if we're thinking about commercial uses and how they might adapt over time in small spaces like this, staff is typically moving toward recommending a more general use category like general retail. So that, for instance, years down the road, if there's another user such as a shoe store or something, they wouldn't need to then come back to the Plan Commission and ultimately the Common Council to to again amend the plan development in order to allow a different retail use. But it is within the Plan Commission's purview to specify it. You can be as specific as you'd like to be within a planned development. And then the challenge is just enforcing that and making sure that if in the future there's any new use, knocking on this door, that it would come back to the Plan Commission and ultimately the Common Council to again decide whether that use was, warranted a change to the zoning text or that list of uses.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any further questions of staff? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion. Commissioner Cantrell.
I will recommend that the Plan Commission find the approval standards for plan development are met and approve the alteration of the Plan Development District specific implementation plan for 3822 Mineral Point Road to amend the zoning text to allow a bookstore as a permitted use.
Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Figueroa Cole. Did you wish to speak to your motion, Commissioner Cantrell?
Yeah. One of the reasons why I've recommended this, it sounds like there hasn't been a lot of communications with the neighborhood regarding this use, and a bookstore, although it's general retail, it's a very minimal use, at least in my opinion, than other general retail activities. And I understand why staff would recommend, and maybe the property owner too, widening it. So if the bookstore eventually decides to close, that they would have a greater opportunity to rent the space. And it's a small space. And the plan shows a neighborhood mixed use. And that makes total sense. But at this point in time, I think because of the circumstances, I think that limiting it to a bookstore might be the best approach. I think in the future, that more discussion, maybe with the neighborhood, should occur, and then if the use changes, to open it up to general retail at that point. But that's why I've recommended it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there any further comments or discussion? Alder Figueroa Cole, did you have your hand up? Did you wish to comment?
Yes, I have a question. So is the coffee shop a retail option also? Is it on the retail, or do we have a use for coffee shops?
A coffee shop would not be retail. That would be under, let's see.
Coffee house, tea house.
Thanks, Tim.
Okay.
I found it. Sorry, thank you. All right. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I only second the motion, but I actually would rather to stay on the. I don't know if that is the best practice to continue to create these unique classifications. And like Heather was saying earlier about how to enforce them. So I don't know. I mean, again, I only second the motion to hear what the reason was, but I'm not in support of it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Any other comments or discussion? Commissioner Solheim.
I'll just add in, I also will not be supporting the motion. Just looking at the space, I think it's not an easy retail space to lease. I don't have a concern that a large big box chain that would be concerning for the neighborhood would come in there. But also, I don't really feel that it's our place to continually review specific uses for 5,000 square foot retail spaces, as was mentioned by Alder Figueroa Cole. So for that reason, I won't be supporting it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments, input? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote. Heather, could you do a roll call because we don't have consensus on this one?
I will. Let's see. I'll start with Alders. Alder Duncan.
I will not be supporting no.
Alder Field.
No.
Alder Figueroa Cole.
No.
Commissioner Spencer.
No.
Commissioner Solheim.
No.
Commissioner Cantrell.
Yes.
Okay. That is everyone. Okay, so I have 1 yes and 5 no's.
Okay, motion fails. Could I have a second motion, a different motion? Commissioner Solheim.
I will move that the Plan Commission find the approval standards for plan developments are met and approve the alteration of the PD SIP for 3822 Mineral Point Road to amend the zoning text and add general retail as a permitted use, subject to the conditions in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner. Seconded by Alder Field. Did you wish to speak to your motion, Commissioner Solheim? Okay.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Any comments on this? Any discussion? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, that moves us then to business by members. Is there any business by members? Seeing no raised hands, Secretary's report. Heather.
Okay, thank you. I would love to add the staff sentiment regarding Commissioner Cantrell. Really want to thank you for your 12 years of service to the Plan Commission. I think you've been, a mentor to many staff that I've worked with over time, and just your thorough review and knowing that you've read the staff recommendation, and even when our opinions differ, it's just always been such a thorough and respectful approach you've taken to tough decisions on the commission. And I guess I'll speak for our whole staff team, and not only our whole staff team, but those who have served as part of the planning division before, during your time on the commission, and just echo everyone's thanks to your service. So thank you. And then let's see, moving forward to the rest of the Secretary's report, the Common Council actions recently, the Common Council did approve the Hilldale mixed use development, as well as the amendment to the official map for a portion of the Greater Easttown planning area as recommended by the Plan Commission. Looking forward to our June 12th meeting. Kevin Furco will be staffing that meeting in my absence. And that meeting will have an introduction of the subdivision ordinance update. I want to give Tim Parks a lot of credit for a lot of interagency leadership of an interagency team reviewing that ordinance. Changes to the ordinance are primarily driven by the complete green streets policy that was recently adopted. But there are also many changes to the ordinance language. This is an ordinance from the 50s. And so, as you can imagine, all those decades later, there are a lot of just changes to bring the language up into this century. And Tim's done a great job of really taking a stab at that. And so our plan is to approach that with the Plan Commission as an overview on June 12th for final consideration for your recommendation on June 26th. Also on June 12th, we'll have the adoption of the Reiner Neighborhood Development Plan on the far northeast side of the city. before you. And that's where I'll leave it for the 12th. Looking forward to the 26th. We'll have a new election process for the Plan Commission chair and vice chair, as well as Plan Commission appointments to the Joint Campus Area Committee and the Transportation Commission. We will have 2 new members joining us on actually the meeting of the 12th. So we'll have a couple weeks to kind of start thinking about that, thinking about nominations or willingness to serve in these other capacities. And we'll also have the return of a project on State Street, the 400 block of State Street, for demolition of a few buildings and the construction of a 26-unit apartment right next to the Lisa Link Peace Park. And then our special meeting of June 22nd, we're working with Chair Zellers to finalize that agenda. 2 of the items that we're confident will be on that agenda relate to street trees and kind of the behind the scenes look at how street trees are dealt with during the development review process, as well as a chance to meet the brand new city forester who's coming to us from Milwaukee. So he'll be at that June 22nd meeting. And then our Metropolitan Planning Organization staff will be presenting an electric vehicle plan from a regional perspective. So we'll have those 2 items for sure, and we'll continue to work with Chair Zellers on that agenda. Looking forward to seeing all of you in person for that June 22nd work session. That is all I have for this evening. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Heather. I would be looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Commissioner Cantrell and seconded by Alder Field. Commissioner Cantrell, did you wish to speak to your motion?
Yeah. But before that, I'd like to speak to my 12 years here.
Okay.
It feels like a very short journey here. It's been the greatest pleasure of my career here to be on the Madison Plan Commission. I've had a great time, and it's been wonderful to provide some guidance in the development of this great city. Madison is such a special place. And I'd like to also thank the planning staff. Madison is also blessed to have one of the best planning staffs in this world, in the United States. I've worked with lots of planners in my life, but Madison has a number of great ones here. I'd also like to thank all the members of the Plan Commission members I've worked with, the alders I've worked with over the course of my tenure, and special thanks to the chairs, Nan Fay, Ken Open, and Liddell. They provided and you've provided great guidance for the commission, and you work very hard, and it makes the commission's lives much easier when there's a strong leadership at the chair. And lastly, I want to thank my partner, Patrick Flanagan, for putting up with me and my time commitments to the commission, and putting my time commitments to the commission before other things in our lives. But it's been a great experience here, and it was very fun. Even though I didn't win the last motion, but that's okay.
No, you're going to win the last motion to adjourn.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. And upon that, I recommend that the Plan Commission meeting adjourn for the night. Thanks again.
Okay. Thank you very much, Brad. And on that, we will move to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. And
thanks, Brad.
Yes.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay. Good night.
Thank you.